Okay, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you're here and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy lives to join me on this informational chat about health and wellness. I know with the new year, we have that on the forefront of our mind. Usually, New Year's resolutions goals will include something that has to do with health and wellness, whether it's weight loss, whether it's starting an exercise routine, whether it's eating healthier, whether it's sleeping more. So it's kind of timely to introduce some things and get things rolling for this new year. So this is a perfect time with the winter to kind of hone in on some new habits. So, what I want to talk about today, and I really believe the reason why I chose this as a first topic for our first Wednesday wellness meetings is because I think we have to identify what health actually is. And I say that it sounds very simple because you might think, well, it's pretty obvious what health is, but not so much. There are some myths and there are some beliefs that we have regarding multiple topics, but just speaking about health, that I noticed when I speak to clients or in the past over the last couple decades, it's a lot of times people usually will say to me, I eat healthy, or I'm generally very healthy, but I'm struggling with XYZ. So what happens is then I would kind of take that in and assume that we were talking about the same subject. It wasn't until I started asking more questions like, well, what does that mean for you? Because health actually has different meanings for different people, and it's usually based on their experiences of how they were raised, what they were exposed to, what their personal trainer told them, what their doctor told them, maybe their best friend. I don't know. There's just a collaboration of different sources of information that come in, and then we adopt them as truth without question. And so we believe it. And then what is a belief? It's something we keep thinking over and over, right? So we have these sometimes false ideas about health. And so I want to identify that. I think it's super important. So, asking yourself, what does health mean to you? So, people, will commonly say, well, maybe I'm asking them about what they eat on a normal basis. Like, give me a snapshot of what your normal day looks like, not every day, but what does a typical day look like? And sometimes they'll say, I have egg white omelet in the morning. I might have turkey and, on low fat bread for lunch. Maybe I'll have chicken and broccoli and whatever for dinner. So I ask questions because they might have a certain trend that I see that, oh, I notice that they avoid fat because they said low fat multiple times and they're not eating egg yolk. So then I asked, well, do you not eat the egg yolk, for example, because you don't like egg yolks? And then often I would get, well, no, I mean, aren't egg yolks bad for you? And then I asked them, well, do you think they're bad for you? And usually I would get a response of, well, I thought that they were high in cholesterol. And then, if I eat them, then I'm going to get high cholesterol. And doesn't that mean that I am more at risk for heart disease? Or isn't that bad for your heart? And there's a lot of like, in their mind, they thought just black and white, like, okay, egg yolks are bad, something to do with the heart, and never like kind of question, is that really true? So then I'll go into the conversation. Well, actually, egg yolks are not really bad. So this is one of the beliefs that we've been programmed to believe for different reasons. I mean, sometimes it's just simple ignorance. And again, when I say ignorance, I'm not saying it in a way to put anybody down. It's something that I'm referring to the word as something that that person's not aware of. So when we talk about, say, doctors, like our primary care doctor, medical school really doesn't teach anything about nutrition. It's not in the curriculum. So are these doctors intellectual and extremely smart? Absolutely. Do they know about getting to the root of the problem? Unless they're trained that way, not really. So the other factor with that is that a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are actually educating our doctors and our dietitians and our authorities in our health and wellness arena. And we have to look at what is the motive too, because they usually have a solution in the pharmaceutical realm that doesn't include the things that are free, like fasting, like walking in nature, like getting sunlight. So we have to look at the source. So talk about some of the misconceptions. So, is fat bad for us? Does fat and eating cholesterol cause high cholesterol and cause heart disease? Well, no. And then I'll say it depends. So again, when I speak on these subjects, I'm not trying to diagnose or or give you medical advice. I'm just simply making you more aware that there's other options and there are customized recommendations for everybody. We're not a one size fits all. So what works for me may not work for you. And the reason why is because we have different things going on inside of our bodies based on our lifestyle, based on our genetics, based on our age, based on our hormones. So there's a lot of moving parts. But my attempt is to keep it really simple. So for today, so what I want to define is that something that some of the common beliefs around health is that we are to avoid animal fats, we're to avoid saturated fats, we're to avoid salt. Okay, so just those, and then also avoid the sun, right? So I have listed three things that actually the complete opposite is true. And that's a scary thought. So, because a lot of us, a lot of people are making decisions on their lifestyle, their diet, their habits based on the fact that they have been given fear towards animal fats, saturated fats, salt, and the sun. And it turns out that it's actually the opposite. We really do need saturated fat. It's actually very good for us. Now, am I recommending that you eat all saturated fat? No, we need a variety, but we don't want to demonize something like the egg yolk that is actually one of the most perfect foods that you can eat. It has the most nutrients in it. Salt, you would die without it. And what I find, and I'm going to circle back to this, but hair tissue mineral analysis is something that I was introduced to a few years ago. I knew nothing about it. In my experience, in my practice, I primarily worked with blood labs. So I would review labs, we would order labs at the wellness center where I worked. We would look at hormones, we would look at nutritional deficiencies in the blood and in the cell, okay, intracellular. I wasn't introduced to hair testing at that point. I started going down um, the rabbit hole of minerals and how our bodies are made of minerals. And I was introduced to this amazing test for hair because hair is soft tissue. So we can really see what's going on inside that person's body, which is very individual. It's actually, in some ways, better than blood work. A blood work in combination is always good. The more testing you can do, the more information you have about what's going on in your body is best. But okay, so circling back, we'll get more to that. But what I was going to say, the reason why I brought it up is because we were talking about salt, and sodium is one of the first four major minerals. We have four major minerals. Salt, sodium, is a major mineral. Without it, we are in deep trouble. So we actually need salt. And again, I'll refer to the experts in this area. If you want to dive deeper into any of these subjects, I'm happy to provide you resources. So if you want to take the time to read published medical studies or books on doctors that have written about this, I will absolutely provide that for you. But in the book, oh, now it literally just left my mind. Real salt. Well, Redmond's real salt is something I use, but the book title will come to my head. But what you need to know is that even in the case of, there are certain situations where we have to be mindful of certain things as such as salt and how much you should take in of it. Again, that's a customized recommendation. But overall, most people that I test, in my experience, absolutely need sea salt. I'm not recommending the iodized salt. I'm talking about Celtic salt. I'm talking about Redmond's real salt. You want to do your research and just get something that doesn't have heavy metals in it. But the minerals that are found in these salts are vital to our health, and sodium is one of them. So believe it or not, we need sodium. Now, some people might say, but if I take in salt, I blow up and I swell. And that could happen to you. And that's because you have an imbalance of your minerals. So in that case, a lot of times that means that we need more filtered water, number one, but we also need magnesium and we need to balance our minerals. So getting back to general recommendations, how much salt should we take in? In my experience, it's very safe to say about 2 teaspoons of salt, Redmond's real salt or Celtic salt, for example, throughout your day. So 2 teaspoons throughout the day is something that's going to be beneficial and sometimes bare minimum. You usually need more than that. So we get salt from some of our foods. We get salt or sodium in our supplements. So there's again different recommendations, but if you're avoiding salt, I would start adding it. A lot of times, this is the root cause of why people are low energy. Often, I've had people say to me, "Oh, I need carbs because I'm tired." So we kind of reach for sugar or we reach for the carbohydrates because it gives us that instant energy. But really, what we're just doing is putting a band-aid on the real problem, which is you're not really needing the sugar or the carbohydrates, you're needing salt. So when I have clients up their salt intake or start taking in some high sodium electrolytes, they turn around and they're like, I can't even believe this. I feel so great. I have so much more energy. My brain fog is gone. And it was all because of the sodium. So the other thing I'm going to say is that we don't want to avoid certain things because we think they're unhealthy. Red meat happens to be one of the most mineral dense healthy foods that you can eat. Understandably, some people don't enjoy it, or maybe it's not part of your culture, that maybe based on your religion, you may not take in red meat, and that's fine. We find other alternatives, but if it is in your practice to eat red meat, please do. Grass-fed, pastured organic is going to be your highest quality. So that's what we have to look at is we really want to look at the quality, not the quality of the meat. Okay, so that's really important. So sourced properly. Unfortunately, we do have sources that aren't good. Industrialized meat is definitely not your first choice. However, there is nutrient density in those meats as well, but just for ethical reasons and for higher quality nutrients, we want to go something with 100% grass fed. And then the next thing you want to look for is that pastured component so that the animals are treated well. So again, how do we define health? Because a lot of people say, oh, I'm healthy. I'm not on any medication. I'm healthy. I don't have any diseases. But is that really what health is? When I look at health, I want to see complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It means vitality. It means getting up and being inspired and having energy to complete your tasks, not just surviving and pushing through them and feeling unmotivated. Now, of course, we're going to have days where we don't feel are optimal, but I'm just talking about in general, that mental clarity, that desire and energy to move your body, to sleep well. Okay, these are all connected to actual good health. So as we said, we're focusing on whole real food. So if I was to just put a blanket recommendation for diet, and I'm going to pull in the question that actually Pam had about macronutrient. So there are macronutrients, which are the ones we're going to talk about are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Okay. Each macronutrient contains each gram of a protein, of a carbohydrate, and a fat contain a certain amount of calories. We do not count calories in my world. What I do look at as macronutrients, and I focus primarily on prioritizing protein because protein is a vital macronutrient that's needed for our muscle repair, our bones, our building blocks of our cells. So protein's super important, and most people don't get enough. So each gram of, just so you guys, this is just for your knowledge, there's not a test at the end. I just want to give you the information. But protein and carbohydrates, each gram of a protein and each gram of a carbohydrate are equal to 4 calories. Each gram of a fat, okay, such as avocado, nuts or seeds, or butter, coconut oil, olive oil, each gram of a fat is 9 calories. So that's just to give you an idea of if I eat a 100 calorie banana and it's primarily made up of carbohydrates, then I just ate um the 100 calories is all carbohydrate. So each of those, so basically, okay, I'm sorry, let me say it's 30 grams of carbohydrates, and each gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories. So 120 calorie, let's say I had 120 calories or 30 grams of carbohydrates, if that makes sense. Um, I don't like to give specific recommendations for grams of things if I'm not working with you and testing you, but I can give you a range. So, how much protein should we be eating, for example? Okay. I don't know if you have any idea about that. You can put it in the chat if you have a guess how much protein you should be eating. But I'm going to tell you that let's just say you're having 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We want to shoot for 25 to 50 grams of, so Pam wrote 35%. So it depends because then we're pointing out calories, right? So if we're not counting calories and we're just talking about grams, I'm going to say 30, I'm sorry, 25 as a minimum to 50 grams of protein per meal if you're having 3 meals, right? And you're going to go on the higher side if you're only, say, having 2 meals and a snack or just 2 meals. So we can get into different ways of eating schedules, but let's just say we're going to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that would mean that we'd have 75 grams to about 150 grams of protein per day. Now, again, this could be more or less depending on what's going on with you. Are you a bodybuilder? Are you extremely active? What are your goals? Do we have to limit your protein for any reason, kidney reasons? So we have to look at that. But I'm just talking about the average person that wants to lose body fat, maintain or grow muscle, okay? Then you're going to have a minimum of 25 to 50 grams of protein. What about carbohydrates? Like how much carbohydrate? And this is always this always strikes me as like this is the real reason why people are really navigating or driving in a car without a speedometer and you're assuming you're going 40 miles an hour, but you may be going 60 or you may be going 30. It's hard to tell if you're not measuring. I don't encourage you to measure everything and become obsessive. I just think it's a great experiment to measure for a time so you get an idea. Get a food scale. Okay, because most people don't know, well, what does that mean? Like 40 grams of protein, what does that mean? So I'll give you a rule is basically every ounce of animal protein is 7 grams of I'm sorry, every ounce of animal protein equals about 7 grams. So if I have 4 ounces, I'm having about 28 grams of protein, right? So if I'm having 6 ounces of chicken, that's going to yield me about 42. An egg, okay, has 6 grams of protein. So that's why if you have one egg in the morning, it's not going to cover your protein projected your protein goal. Okay. So 75 grams to 150, that's a pretty large range, but we can talk more about personalization. But just take that as a range. But what about carbohydrates? Because I don't know, depending on what you're reading, we want to decrease carbs, right? That's the best way to lose fat. Um, that's the healthiest to lower our sugar. But you'd be surprised, there's a lot of there's carbohydrates really in everything. So when people tell me there's zero carb, that means that they're just unaware that there's carbohydrates in vegetables. These are the carbohydrates we want to focus on. Carbohydrates are wonderful. And again, depending on your activity level, depending on if you're lifting weights or if you're not, depending on if you're exercising, if I'm sitting at my desk all day long and then I'm only getting 2,000 steps a day and I take in 200 grams of carbohydrates a day, I'm probably either going to stay the same weight that I am or I'm going to gain weight because we need to utilize that sugar and energy. And the only way we do that is by moving. Okay. So carbohydrates on the low side, it would be the very low side, which would be considered a ketogenic diet, would be 20 grams of carbohydrates. And then so depending again on your goals, I would say you really you wouldn't go over 150 grams of carbohydrates a day unless you're splurging on something. Because if we're going to follow eliminating processed foods and fast foods, what do I mean by processed foods? I mean breads, pastas, crackers, cookies. And again, we have so many choices now of like healthier options that are made with better oils, which we'll go through this list in a second that I have up on the screen. But if I'm just sticking with a whole real food diet, okay, I'm probably not going to exceed 150 carbohydrates a day. And it would actually be hard to get to that because as I just cited a banana earlier, which is all carbohydrates, it's about 30 carbohydrates, 30 grams of carbohydrates for one medium banana. If I eat a banana during my breakfast and then at lunch I had a small sweet potato that might yield 35 grams of carbohydrates. And then at dinner, maybe I have spaghetti squash, a couple cups of spaghetti squash. So maybe I had another 40 or 50 grams of carbohydrates. Well, if we add that up, right, I had carbs in every meal, but I still didn't hit more than 110 or 125. So again, I don't want to put a blanket recommendation down. I'm going to say that there are different um, opinions and different recommendations based on, I don't attach myself to any diet or eating plan. I'm into whole real food. I help people, even if they're vegetarians, to be healthier and to teach them how to get all these macronutrients in. So I would say that if you're generally sedentary, and you're just maybe starting to exercise, maybe you're walking, that you're going to keep your carbohydrates probably between 50 carbohydrate grams of carbs to 100 carbs per day. And again, the recommendations might vary if you're a menstruating woman. If you're postmenopausal, then 50 to 100. And then you can even go lower on some days to really get into that ketosis where we're burning extra body fat. So we'll do another more specialized talk on like menopause and postmenopause, and where I can give more specific recommendations for helping with that metabolism that tends to slow down when our hormones go down. Let me go through this and then I'll get into a little bit of the menopausal hormone story. So I hope that that helped you. We didn't talk about fat grams, did we? So when somebody, and again, I don't attach myself, there are some nutrition coaches, nutritionists, um, practitioners that focus on specific dietary models, whether that's vegetarian, whether that's paleo, whether that's keto, whether that's carnivore. I am I'm coming from the space of I want to work with you with the foods that you like. I want to introduce you and make recommendations based on nutritional value, and making sure you're getting a variety of food and getting all the nutrients that you need. Okay. So, and again, what your goals are. If I'm working with somebody that if you have 30 pounds to lose, or you have 5 pounds to lose, or you want to gain weight, or you want to maintain, there might be a little bit of a varied recommendation. The other variance and recommendation would be, as I mentioned before, when I do a hair test, I have a peek into what's going on with your metabolism. Are you a slow metabolizer? What level of slow are you? Are you a fast metabolizer? And where are you at? So based on how your thyroid's functioning, how your adrenals are functioning, and how your metabolism is functioning, which I see in a hair test, then I can say, okay, Mary, I'm going to recommend a very low carb diet for you and a higher fat. Maybe Sue needs higher protein, less intake of fat, but still fat is needed, and maybe a little bit more carbohydrates. So it really does vary the recommendations. But let's go on a starting, because sometimes we're coming from a space of, geez, I came from the holidays. I really got into bad habits. I'm now picking at cookies throughout the day. I'm craving sugar. I can't get out of this cycle. How do we get out of it? Well, let's just remove the processed food. Let's eat 3 meals a day. Let's not snack. Okay, because the snacking can really get us in trouble. We don't want to graze through the day. The reason for that is because we want that time of fasting. So our bodies can actually tap into the fat burning hormones and actually give them a chance to burn stored body fat. If we're just eating all day, we're just burning the stuff we're eating. Also, there's mechanisms in the body that only happen when we're fasted. Okay. So let's just take it on 3 meals a day. Let's keep our protein intake to 25 grams to 50 grams per meal. Let's keep our carbohydrates between 50 and 100 per day. And then you could break that up into your meals. And then fat. So if, again, between 55 grams and 95 grams of fat, unless we're doing a ketogenic diet, your fat's going to be higher. Okay. So what is it like when I ask people, this is another, what I was saying before, we're driving a lot without a speedometer. How do we know how fast we're going? How do we know how much we're eating? So when I ask people, how much protein do you eat? Do you measure it, or do you have an idea? And most people say no. They have no idea how much protein they eat. When we go through their typical diet or their typical day, we find that they're extremely low in protein, and that's why they're not losing weight. Once they increase the protein and actually increase what they're eating, they actually lose weight. So, in my experience, sometimes we cut back on the chicken. Like, so we'll have 2 ounces of chicken on our salad, or 3 slices of protein or turkey, which equates like 2 ounces of protein on my low fat bread. It's nowhere near the protein that you need. So you're not going to be satiated, and you're not going to be able to burn that fat. So fat grams, again, you guys can find this very easily. You can go onto different sites or different apps to log your food, which could be MyFitnessPal. It could be uh, there's multiple ones what I would recommend though is making sure that they consider the macronutrients, not just calories. We don't want to count calories. People that restrict their calories over time, you are damaging your metabolism. And that's why we get into this yo-yo dieting rut. I'm sure that you guys have experienced this. I'm not speaking a different language. Most women go through this, and they spend decades chronically dieting. I got to lose weight. I got to lose 5 pounds. I got to do this. So what do? They cut back on their calories because that's what we've been told, or that's been the primary teaching of don't eat so much. Guess what? That's really not the problem. It's what we're eating. You're going to find if you dial in the right foods, it's you're going to be amazed and so happy with the amount of food that you can eat if you get rid of the unhealthy stuff. And believe me, I'm a foodie. I love food. I eat amazing and I love my food because I just use some seasoning. I don't make it difficult. I'm not a chef. I keep it simple, but I just use spices. I use herbs. I use salt. I get high quality food and it doesn't have to be fancy. But remove the what we call, have you guys ever heard, or maybe you haven't, but the hateful eight. Okay. Dr. Kate Shanahan, who wrote the book Deep Nutrition, and she just came out with a book called Dark Calories. She's amazing, this woman. She has one of her primary messages is to avoid the hateful eight oils. Okay, canola, soybean, vegetable oil, grapeseed oil, any seed corn, any of those seed oils, run away from it's poison. And unfortunately, most restaurants will use canola oil or vegetable oil. They do this because it's cheap. And hopefully, this is going to shift as people become more aware and demand better. So, I believe in the next decade, we're going to see a lot more restaurants coming out, advertising healthy oils, healthy fats. We don't use any bad oils. These actually are what are making us fat, sick and tired. One of the reasons, because these oils have found their way into our foods, even our healthy food. So please read labels. So a lot of times, again, as an example, maybe my clients have popcorn for snack. They say, "Oh, well, I'm just having popcorn," or I'm trying to think of another example of something low fat, and then we look at the ingredients, and guess what? It's made with canola oil. So I have this 100-calorie popcorn bag that people are attracted to because it's low calorie, and then we're putting this oil in it. So we're so blessed now because um we have a lot of products that are now are companies that are using good fats, avocado oil, olive oil, beef tallow, um, um, ghee. So we're getting away from these hateful eight. So also, okay, let me just see if there's any questions. Does calories and macros, I use it. Okay. Oh, lose it. It does do calories and macros. Okay. I always recommended, what's the name of it? Now I went blank on the name of the app that I was using for counting, but I have used MyFitnessPal, and there is another one that is not, it'll come to me. The other thing, yes, Joanne asked about carb cycling. I am familiar with it, and I can tell you that it works. A lot of things work. It's just sometimes we don't really know how to do it correctly. So, for example, if somebody has told me that they've done keto and they're like, it didn't work for me. And then when I dig a little deeper, well, how did you do keto? Keto is actually a very therapeutic diet. It can be therapeutic for people that have cognitive decline or brain fog or have a lot of they're type 2 diabetic, they have very high insulin. For epilepsy, it can be extremely beneficial. So the keto diet is not a something that just somebody came up with and it's not a real thing. I mean, the Atkins, keto, wheat belly, these are all very therapeutic and can be very healing to the body, doing them correctly. So do we do internet keto or do we do healthy keto? So when we're going low carb, it's really important to look at the sources of your food because keto doesn't identify if it's canola or a vegetable oil. It's just high fat. So when we carb cycle, basically what that means is that we have a carb loading meal or day where we increase our carbohydrates to, again, it depends on what you're currently eating. Let's say I have somebody or recommend to one of my clients to keep their carbohydrates 50 carbohydrates or lower per day. But then on Sunday, I tell them up your carbohydrates to 150 carbs for that day. And then the next day, you're going to do very low carb. So it's just it carb cycling is just a tool in your toolbox. And it can be very beneficial, but again, without the proper foundation, these things are not going to be beneficial and you're not going to be able to do it. The reason being is because it's going to be really difficult. So it's sort of like I've been eating whatever I want, whenever I want, the whole month of November and December. I snack on cookies. I eat at 11, right before I go to bed. I'm starting my day with like a bowl of cereal and milk and maybe, or Dunkin' Donuts. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm going to eat nothing but salads and grilled chicken. It's going to be really difficult to transition. So, what we want to do first is start with let's just stop snacking. Let's limit the carbohydrates, but not to an unreasonable amount. Maybe we go down to 100 carbohydrates a day. Maybe we get our sugar from sweet potatoes or Japanese yams or fruit. Okay. And we can push out and crowd out the donuts and the bagels and the cookies that you're eating. If we go jump right into a keto, true keto, you're not going to feel very well. So let's start with focusing on whole real food, bringing in the right proteins. I can give you a tip, the Diet Doctor. I really like that app. The Diet Doctor will provide you with lots of very simple recipes and meal, like a program, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or if you're eating just two meals a day, maybe breakfast and lunch or lunch and dinner, higher protein, good ingredients, okay, lower carb. So if it's going too low carb for you, you can always add in a sweet potato, a Japanese yam, a cup of spaghetti squash, butternut squash, a bowl of berries. So you can always adapt it, but the Diet Doctor will give you a really nice different choices of meal plans. And they give you the shopping list and it's a really great app. Um, okay, so what can we do? I really wanted you to walk away from this conversation with three things that you can start today that will change your health, and it doesn't cost any money. Um, there was a podcast. I'll send it out in the email. There's a woman, Carrie Bennett, and my son actually just did a podcast with her and interviewed her about light and water. And without getting in, if you want to dive deeper into the science, you're going to check out her website and listen to this interview. But what you need to know is that, as Carrie explains in the interview, she was suffering. She's a nutritionist. She's a personal trainer. She was a clinical nutrition. Like she knew all the stuff. She was doing all the things, exercising. She even owned a gym. And after she had her first child, she suffered with insomnia. The information she fell upon, she couldn't believe that she was missing this piece because she would get up and what do we normally do? So a typical person on a typical day will wake up. The first thing we do is grab our phone and look at our emails or look at our messages. We go downstairs, we pour the coffee, maybe we get in the shower, we get ready for work, you get in the car, you drive to the office, you get into this building with that's lit up by fluorescent lights, and you spend the day there. And then maybe you leave, and it might even be dark out at this point during the year, right? Maybe in the summer it's still light out, but basically, you've spent the entire day never seeing sunlight, never getting outside, never thinking about light therapy. And what that does is that we have a mechanism that sits on the top of our in our brain, on the top of our mouth, and it's a signal that is woken up or it's activated by sunlight. Now, what's the difference between and this mechanism in our body literally sets the clock to tells all the cells in your body, all the organs what to do. It's time to wake up, it's time to release cortisol, it's time to release melatonin, it's time to start the digestive system going because we're starting the day. And then as we go through the day, we want to get as much light as possible. And that means light from visible light too. So, what is the sun giving us? It's giving us light, but it's giving us different wavelengths of light. So, we have visible light. That's the main part of the sun. So, we could see, right? I have a light over my computer right now. It's giving me vision so I could see. What is it missing? Because the sun has UV light, a very small amount. The UV is what we need to make vitamin D. Then we have infrared and near infrared light. Okay. These, this light actually penetrates our skin and gets into our body and works on healing our cells. So this is very important that we're not just getting light bulb light. Now, we used to use incandescent light bulbs. I don't know if you guys remember that when we had the switch over to LED. This was a big, sad time for our health in America. When we switched over to all LED and got rid of incandescent light bulbs, we actually took away that incandescent light bulb emitted infrared light. So we actually got some health benefits from our light. Now it's blue light, and we're really just constantly being absorbed in blue light, which blue light is not bad. The sun actually emits blue light, it's the visible light, but we need the other healing light. And when we're not exposed to it, our health will suffer. You will not sleep because your body never knows when it's time for bed. Think about it. You go home, all the lights are on, then you're on your computer, then you're watching TV, and then it's like, all right, I'm going to try to go to sleep. And then it's like 11:30 at night, and you're laying there like, I can't sleep. I can't sleep. Then your mind starts going. So this woman, Carrie, fell upon this information, and all she did was go outside for 3 minutes. I mean, she kept it real like ignorance on fire. She kept it on ignorance on fire initially and just kind of did the bare basic, like, let me just pop my head out the window, keep my, get some vision, get some light. And then throughout the day, would go outside instead of being at the gym. And when she got a break being on her phone, she would go outside and walk around. Okay. Guess what happened? Within 3 days, she slept. She also took notice of the light in the house and she realized why her baby wasn't sleeping because she had night lights, blue light in the bedroom for the baby. And what do you think that does? It goes through, it keeps you awake. Okay. So, one of the things, this is actually going to set you up for the best night's sleep. Getting outside. I know it's difficult right now with the cold. So, what I do is I have a happy light. I don't know if that's the best advice. So, I will say that I've been using a happy light. This is just basically visible light. When I'm having my coffee, I put my visible light next to me so that I tells my body, it tells the mechanism in my brain that it's time to be awake. And then I go outside for about 10 to 15 minutes. I try to stay out longer. When it's 18 degrees, I don't, but I do the best I can. Because even on a cloudy day, the lux, which is the measurement of the light coming from the sun or coming from any light structure, is always brighter outside, even on a cloudy day, than the brightest of lights indoors. So, quoting Dr. Andrew Huberman, he did extensive teachings on circadian rhythm. He's a PhD scientist. And anyway, he says, based on the research, that we need 100,000 lux of light before 9 a.m. in order for your body to be woken up. And if you miss that opportunity where you're in the dark, like let's say you stay in bed for this is not happening, I'm sure, with you guys, but There are people that have this habit of like getting up, waking up, and like going on their phone and maybe falling back asleep, and maybe they sleep in. And they miss this whole opportunity. Like their body never knows when we're supposed to get started with the mechanisms in our body. So they get up and they don't go outside and they spend they're very sluggish. So if we get 100,000 lux of light, so let's just say the sun's emitting 10,000 lux, that means 10 minutes outside. That's all you need. There is a light meter on your phone. It's an app. You can download it and you can kind of hold it when you're outside or in the light inside and see what the lux of light is. They do recommend some sort of diffuser, but just to give you an idea. So get outside in the morning. It's so much easier when it's nice weather because you can have your coffee outside. But 10 to 15 minutes, 10 to 30 minutes before 9 a.m. You get extra credit if you view a sunrise and a sunset. So what happens when it gets dark? What do we do? Well, we have blue blocking glasses. So unless you're like keeping all your lights off and you're really keeping it only red light, they do sell. Number one, they sell incandescent light bulbs, which I'd highly recommend for the areas in your home that you're in most of the time that you have the light on. And then you can also just have red light for light vision, like for a night light. But they do sell blue blocking glasses. And I wear them at night after sunset, and then I'll watch TV. It blocks the blue light. And that way I'm not getting, it's not as good as completely avoiding the screens, but it works. And so you want to wear blue blocking glasses after sunset so that you can transition into sleep and your body knows what to do. Okay, so this is going to help with your energy, just getting out that sun exposure. Number two is movement. So I understand, listen, I've fallen in and out of exercise habits. It happens. Some people are really excellent at maintaining their schedule of working out. But what is more important than even going to the gym and pumping it out for an hour is the daily movement throughout the day. So not just in that 1 hour at the gym, but throughout the day. So we want to aim, and if you have any kind of measurements, whether you're carrying your phone or you have a watch or I wear an Oura ring, aim for 7,000 steps a day because at 7,000 steps, there's a lot of studies that show that this is where you're going to find the most benefits in your health. Extra credit for 10,000 or more. Break it up throughout the day. If you can get a brisk walk in the morning, if that can be fit into your schedule, fantastic. If you're sitting at a desk all day, set your phone for 45 minutes to get up and to move your body for 2 minutes. So for every 45 minutes, get up for 2 minutes. Walk around, do jumping jacks, do some stretching just to get your body moving. Another thing that I'm going to add to this as extra credit would be grounding. So again, very difficult in the cold months to put your feet barefoot on the grass or in the sand. They do sell grounding mats. Like right now, my feet are on my grounding mat. It's earthing.net. It's by the same company, the same man that produced the Earthing documentary, which I'll send in the email, a follow-up email, because it's fantastic. But this is a really good way. You can just put it under your desk. You can get grounding sheets for your bed so that we get charged. That's our way of being charged up ourselves. Okay. Just like our phones need to be charged. So far we went over get out in the sun. Get as much sun throughout the day. Like even if it's for 3 minutes, like pop your head outside and just be like, okay, it's still daytime. Keep your body on schedule. Then the movement, getting in those steps. Of course, exercising, body weight exercising, getting your heart rate elevated a certain amount of time during the week is excellent. But let's just start with this. If you're working at a desk, every 45 minutes, get up, do 2 minutes of movement. Even if you get up and you do squats, like you can get up in your seat and do squats for a minute, tapping your chair. Like this is really going to be Very beneficial, and you're going to notice a difference. The third habit that I'm going to tell you that I would highly recommend is hydration, but I'm going to add in the electrolytes because a lot of people are drinking a lot of water and they're peeing all the time. Why? Because it's going right through them. They're not absorbing it. Why? Because they're missing electrolytes. We are electrical beings. We need potassium, sodium, magnesium. We need calcium too, but I don't recommend supplementing with that. But there are, I'm going to say Relight is made by Redmond's Real Salt. That is um, they have different flavors. You can add that to your water. You can use Celtic salt if you're okay with putting some salt in your water and when you're drinking it to help with absorption. Sometimes I recommend doing a quarter teaspoon in the morning with other tinctures that maybe you're taking and drink that first thing because as you drink your coffee, you're going to be depleting your sodium levels as well. So just those three simple habits, just water, sun, and movement. And I really believe that, just implementing those three things will get you going into other habits. Maybe it'll get you to the gym. Maybe, you're going to have more energy. We Let me just review this and then I'll see if there's any questions. So health is a complete physical, mental, and social well-being. We talked about eating whole, real, nutrient-dense foods, avoiding processed oils, canola oil, the hateful eight, vegetable oil, soybean oil, corn oil, daily habits, sunlight exposure, regular movement, proper hydration. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the HTMA, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm happy to provide you with any learning resources if you want to deep dive into any of the subjects that we talked about. I know that what I feel is important, well, my gift or what I bring to the table is that I take this information and give it to you in bite-size quantities and just give you the cliff notes because I go down the rabbit holes and I do follow the doctors and I do listen to the 3-hour webinars regarding this information. A lot of science. It's great. I love learning it, but you're busy, right? We're busy all doing our thing, our jobs, our families, and we just need the cliff notes. What do I do? Get out in the sun. Okay, I could do that. But if you want to learn, if you have that mind and need to know more information, I'm happy to provide you with that. So start implementing those daily habits. If you want to learn more about the HTMA, I'm happy to talk to you about it. In that email I sent, and I'm going to send it again, has a 15-minute link, 15 minute to schedule a 15-minute call, like Zoom. Um, and that's it. So I'm so happy again to present this information for you, and I hope that you got something out of it. So let me see if there's anything in the chat. Um, okay. Um, Yes, Rita, keto is considered high fat. So what that would look like is you're basically going to look at in terms of grams, your carbohydrates in a true keto is 20 carbohydrates a day. And that's not net carbs, that's carbohydrates. But if you wanted to do net carbs, you could. Net carbs are basically taking a food and doing the total carbohydrates minus the fiber and also sugar alcohols. So that's why you see some of these products that like they're keto products and they have carbohydrates in it, but then they have a lot of fiber in there. And so they subtract that out. So it negates the carbohydrate absorption. If you really want to be, I mean, taking out the fiber in a real food like a sweet potato or asparagus or broccoli or cauliflower is better than going with like a processed keto treat where they add fiber into it. Some people find that actually derails their keto attempt. Um, and then the fat intake is going to be more on the higher side. So instead of 55 to 95 grams of fat, it's more like 95 to 150 grams of fat. So it's a lot more fat because we have a lot less carbs. And actually, on a true keto, protein is a little bit more limited to about 50 grams. I think it's fun to experiment with different things, like even just doing a reset. Like, okay, I'm going to do a vegetarian keto reset. I'm going to do a mimicking fasting, which is actually vegetarian for 5 days. I follow Dr. Mindy Pelz. She's an awesome resource. She wrote the book Fasting Like a Girl, and she really addresses premenopausal and postmenopausal women, how they should fast, different fasting techniques. She's a great source of information, but she leads her community through like different types of fasting, whether it's mimicking fasting, whether it's a high protein week, just like because we don't have to do the same thing all the time and we can experiment and see what our body likes and what we get. Because sometimes keto will be good, but then other times we need more protein. Other times we need more carbs. Recommendations. Yeah, Pam, I'm so sad. I have been using Element for years. I absolutely love Element. I was ordering like 4 boxes a month, and then I don't know if you've heard about what they found in they had I they had a high level of, I'll tell you what it is. It's basically a sugar that they weren't revealing in the ingredients. So
Okay.
I am not taking it anymore. I'm using up what I have. So that's why I'm on the search for a good electrolyte too. The reason why I chose Element was because Relight, which is a great quality electrolyte, um, has some milligrams of calcium in it, 60 milligrams. It's not a lot. I wouldn't worry about it. But I personally, based on my mineral balancing program is I'm minimizing calcium intake because I want to move my calcium. So that's a whole other story. So I wasn't using Relight, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do. There's some recommendations, but Element I'm staying away from. I'm very disappointed. I was very disheartened by their lack of transparency with this particular ingredient, which I can't remember the name of right now. But yeah, it's like if it's like a sugar. And some people actually on the comments of some of the blogs that have been out about it have been doing it for years because they promoted it as keto and being no calories and then or no sugar, and people were struggling with weight loss and they were using like 3 to 4 a day, and then when they stopped after this came out they actually lost weight and they actually were able to get into ketosis.
Okay. Thanks, Ciola.
Mhm. Does anybody else have any questions that they want to ask? You know what I'm going to do? Did Joanne leave? Okay, I was going to talk about some of the hormones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording, and this way we can talk further about personal questions if you want. And again, thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see you guys every week.